How will you support the existing small businesses on Georgia Avenue? What will you do to attract new retail to Georgia Avenue? How would you enforce regulation that requires employers to hire a percentage of DC residents?
I said before, I'm particularly concerned with the tax structure, and one of the things that really hurts all businesses, but particularly small businesses, is the fact that DC has the highest property taxes in the region, $1.85 per $100 of assessed valuation. And none of the surrounding districts have that high a level, and in fact, Congress said home rule, we were supposed to have comparable taxes, and we don't. PG County ranges between 87 cents and $1.06 per $100. Even Montgomery County, the very highest and the best districts are $1.70, not $1.85. And Alexandria, Arlington, both 85 cents per $100. So we got to get those taxes down. And as I said before, people living in the district who are paying less taxes, especially at the lower levels, they will be spending more money locally. And if you're a single person, as I said before, a family of four would pay $16,000 on $16,000 less, and one $4,000 less.
So one of the things you have to do to improve the viability of small businesses along the corridor is we have to improve the transit infrastructure. I mean, you look at Georgia Avenue and the number of metro buses that travel up and down, the size of the buses, and yet buses are chronically late. And so this is a question where we have to begin to ask ourselves, is circulator the lever for us, because it's something that we can control locally. We can make sure that we provide the right amount of volume, and we can get people to and from the nearest metro rail stop so they can get to and frequent the corridor. I think we also have to look at how we provide the financing and support for local small businesses, and in particular, businesses owned and operated by DC residents to open and grow along the Georgia Avenue corridor. Because there's no doubt, if we want to look at how we employ DC residents, the best way to do that is to make sure that we have locally owned and operated businesses that have an incentive to, one, they're owned and operated by residents, and two, to hire locally. And that's how you really generate the economic development we want to have, is to have small businesses that are the job creators, that are hiring locally, to really support the continued growth and development up and along Georgia Avenue.
Thank you. Well, I do think small business is the backbone of the DC economy, and I've got to tell you which committees I wanted to be on, so I'll tell you now that small and local business is the committee that I would want to serve on most, because I do think it is so important. But I think in a free market system, you've got to take into consideration that what you need are consumers in order to have a healthy business economy. And that's one of the things that I would look at as underlying policies to a healthy business economy. Things like, why are the middle class moving out? It's, a lot of that is because of the schools, poor quality of schools. Affordable housing, that's why the middle class is moving out of DC. So there's some underlying problems, and within an area, as you look at how do you make that a retail-friendly area or a business-friendly area, again, you've got to look at crime and all of those things. So I think you have to just take a very holistic approach toward it.
This issue is very dear and near to me. I'm a small business owner, came from a family of small business owners, and the uniqueness cannot be overcome by our uniqueness in Ward 1 or in the district, cannot be overrun with corporations like Walmart and other corporations that are going to close out our small businesses and are going to create jobs. Yes, they're going to create jobs, but they're going to create jobs that doesn't give us any benefits. We're not going to get any health care, and they're going to treat us awful, as you've heard about them. We have the potential here in Ward 1 to be the Wisconsin Avenue of Washington, D.C., and I think the city should establish a dedicated business fund to help current Georgia Avenue business owners and to the lower business owners in Georgia Avenue. Because if we are able to create business, they say that there's a preference, but the DC residents are not being employed. I'm out waving, walking the streets. We see people with tags from Virginia and Maryland coming to the district to work. We see them at the subways coming from Maryland and Virginia to work. DC residents are not being employed, and so we need to create for ourselves. We need to be like James Brown. We don't want anybody to give us nothing. Open up the door and let us get it ourselves.
Well, it all boils down to the DC dollar circulating in our community. When I was chair of the Committee on Government Operations, I took spending with our local small disadvantaged businesses from $98 million to $567 million because I called in the agency heads every year, put them on the camera, and asked them, why aren't you in compliance? And compliance went up from one agency being in compliance to 54 of the 56. When I was away from the council the past 4 years, there was never another hearing. As soon as I came back, called them in, that's when we exposed that $400 million was not spent in the community the way it should have been. That was fiscal year 2011. You have to know that the hiring jobs, the first source rules were applicable and applied at the baseball stadium, at the Mandarin Oriental, and at DC USA up here at 14th and Columbia. All other projects, they were out of compliance because no one held them accountable. So it's about holding folks accountable and making sure that the DC dollar circulates in DC and that the DC dollar already has a friend. It's called the law. And the law says those dollars must be with our small and local business development.
The task force, some of the work of the task force laid out the kinds of small businesses that you would like to see along the corridor. And these are the kind of businesses that serve community needs. And it's a great list if you look at it. Hardware stores, pet care stores, bicycle shops, fabric stores, affordable retail. We'd like to see more of that along the corridor. The city does, in all sorts of ways, subsidizes the creation of businesses and jobs. But it tends to use its money for very large projects and often downtown. And there's much less emphasis on the kind of, there's much less resources that's put toward neighborhood revitalization and supporting small businesses. So we need a reorientation of how the city spends its money. And when it comes to local jobs for local residents, small businesses are the best way to do that. Most small businesses are owned by local people and hire local people. The more we support small local businesses, the more we're providing job opportunities for residents of the District of Columbia.
Just a couple of points. I wanted to make one point about the circulator, and I meant to mention the drivers are non-union for the circulator, so to me that's a concern. Overall, I still like the concept of a low-cost, short route bus, but I prefer union jobs over non-union jobs. As far as, right, and as a Green Party person, I have to say that. And also, as far as the construction sites, what Mr. Orange was talking about, we do need to hold these companies to account. I've understood from friends who do construction that there's now somebody from DC Housing that's out at the site making sure that local people are getting those jobs and that they're funneling them in and not allowing people from Delaware and far away to come in and work on, for example, on the 11th Street Bridge. So I hope that we can funnel people into those jobs either through the apprenticeship programs, but even beyond that, reentry for offenders who are nonviolent offenders, allow them to get back into the workforce so they're not forced out to do things that they'd rather not do. So let's find ways to employ DC jobs and bring people back into the job market. Thank you.